You know, the story of making a deal with the devil, it feels like it's as old as time itself. But the Faustian bargain is way more than just a spooky tale. It's a timeless blueprint, really, for how our greatest ambitions can curdle and turn into our own damnation. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and deconstruct that very architecture, piece by meticulous piece.
All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to walk through the 6 key stages of this spiritual trap. It all starts with the world of anxiety that sets the scene. Then we'll look at what makes the perfect target. After that, we'll dissect the predator's master plan and the irresistible offer he makes. And of course, we have to talk about signing the diabolical pact, which leads, as it always does, to the inevitable foreclosure. You'll see, every single piece connects to the next in a perfectly unbreakable chain.
So, first things first. To really get how this trap works, we have to understand the world that made it possible. And that takes us to the intense spiritual chaos of Reformation Germany.
I mean, this was a time of just massive upheaval. The authority of the church, which had been this solid rock for centuries, was suddenly cracking apart. And that didn't just happen in a vacuum. It created a spiritual vacuum. For the average person, this wasn't just some abstract debate. It was the very thing that created this deep, gnawing anxiety that a predator could then exploit.
And what's so critical to understand here is just how specific this feeling was. This wasn't some vague sense of unease. The source calls it a specific, high-stakes, existential dissatisfaction. I mean, people were gripped by this intense, gut-wrenching anxiety over where their soul would actually end up, grace or damnation.
So, this world of anxiety is like a pressure cooker, and out of it comes our protagonist. He is the perfect target, and it's not because he's dumb or weak. No, it's because he has these 2 huge internal flaws that create the perfect fault lines for a predator to just wedge themselves into. Okay, so flaw number 1, and this is the big one, his massive intellectual pride. We're not talking about just a simple desire for money or fame. No, this is a deep, arrogant need to go beyond human limits, to get his hands on forbidden knowledge that he thinks will place him above all the messy uncertainty of just having faith.
And this is just the perfect illustration of the toxic combination at work inside him. You have this towering pride on one side, but it's paired with this deep-seated, gnawing, existential fear. He feels completely powerless in the face of these huge spiritual questions. And that mix, that blend of arrogance and terror, well, it creates the perfect internal conflict for a predator to exploit.
So now let's turn to the architect of the whole damn thing, Mephistopheles. You gotta see how he operates. It's with absolute surgical precision. Forget the horns and the pitchfork. Think of him as a master psychologist, a grand strategist.
He doesn't just show up with a bag of gold. No, he performs what the source calls psychological surgery. He's the ultimate cynical banker of the human spirit, right? He uses all of his skill to pinpoint the scholar's deepest anxieties, and then he custom designs the perfect, weaponized bait just for him.
And this is the crucial part. How is this bait actually engineered? See, it's not just one offer. It's this perfectly synergistic, 2-part solution that's designed to solve the scholar's 2 biggest problems all at once. It's basically irresistible.
And there it is, the 2-pronged assault on the soul. On one hand, you get freedom from doubt. On the other, you get freedom from authority. Now, these are not random temptations. These are tailor-made solutions for his 2 biggest issues, his existential fear and his intellectual pride.
So first, to deal with that crippling fear of damnation, he offers something called Gnostic certainty. This is the promise of a master key, basically, the secret, definitive knowledge of God's entire plan. I mean, think about it. For a man who is drowning in doubt, that is the ultimate lifeline.
Then, second, to feed that massive pride and that feeling of powerlessness, he offers unrestricted freedom, the chance to live a life with no rules, no authority, no constraints whatsoever. It's the perfect answer to his deep craving for control and autonomy.
But here's the real kicker. The actual goal here is so insidious, it's not about making him enlightened. The whole point is to make the scholar feel so powerful, so certain, so independent that he swaps out humble faith for what's called the heresy of absolute knowing, the arrogance that he has all the answers. And once he does that, his spiritual failure is guaranteed.
So, these 2 irresistible offers, they work together perfectly, and they lead right to the central mechanism of the whole story, the diabolical pact itself. And you have to understand, this is not a negotiation. This is him accepting the terms of a truly terrible loan.
And if you just look at the terms of this spiritual loan, the imbalance is catastrophic.
The loan is for a finite period of gain, a couple decades of knowledge and freedom. But the collateral is the infinite value of the soul. It is a trade that makes absolutely no logical sense, but in that moment of desperation, it feels like the only way out.
So the actual signing of the pact, that's not really the beginning of the fall. It's more like the keystone in the arch. It's the formal, written ratification of a choice that he already made in his heart. It just locks that final piece of the trap right into place.
And with that contract signed, well, the outcome was engineered from the very beginning. This brings us to the final and totally unavoidable foreclosure.
Turns out, the freedom was an illusion. The knowledge was just a trap. And like with any predatory loan with impossible terms, that spiritual debt eventually comes due. The endgame is, and it always was, the tragic foreclosure of the soul. The cynical banker, he always collects.
When you see it all laid out like this in a final blueprint, it's a terrifyingly flawless logic. Right from the anxious world that created the need, to the specific vulnerability of pride, to the perfectly tailored attack, the binding contract, and the tragic end, every single step was a calculated, necessary link in an unbreakable chain leading straight to ruin.
And that really leaves us with a powerful and kind of uncomfortable question for our own time, right? In an age of endless information, where algorithms are designed to promise us certainty about everything, are we maybe more vulnerable than ever to that same ancient temptation? The heresy of trading away humble faith for the illusion of absolute knowing?